Hello and welcome to Marriage Matters. I'm Dr. Mark.
And I'm Liz, and we're your marriage and communication coaches, here to inspire you, instill hope, and empower you to weather the challenges of married life, with a little help from guest experts and real people like you.
So today, joining us from Wisconsin are Rich and Beth Lahue. You know, I've known Rich and Beth since the 1980s, and well, we've been good friends since basically forever. It was about 5 years ago that I received a call that really shook me. It was a call from his wife Beth and their kids letting me know that Rich had sudden death. And they're going to explain that a little bit, but thank goodness, as you'll see in a moment, Rich and Beth are both alive and well. But the journey is one that we thought would be very interesting for everyone and illustrative. After heroic efforts by the paramedics and the doctors, Rich survived. And again, well, I'll let them tell the rest of their story.
Rich and Beth, welcome to Marriage Matters. So can you tell our viewers a little bit about what happened 5 years ago?
Well, it was a typical Wednesday in the summer here. I'd gone sailing with a friend of mine, and that goes until evening. And I came home, had a little bit of something to eat, and it was time to go to bed. And I said, well, my shoulders are a little tight. I'm just going to stretch them a little bit, before I come to bed. And that's the last thing I remember. And I think that's probably where Beth should pick up the story.
He was just pacing around the house, and then all of a sudden we heard this. I mean, the ground literally shook. And our Labradoodle dog at the time jumped down, came in, and Rich was face down on the hardwood floors. So my son came down from upstairs, realized what the situation was. I was calling 911. We got him, rolled him on his back to start CPR until the paramedics came. And then they came, and he flatlined twice before they got him to the hospital, which is like literally in our backyard. Let's see what. Then the cardiologist came in. They were going to go and do a cath thing, and then he said, but I don't know if he's going to make it through this. So at that point, we started calling my other son, who was stationed in Wichita Falls, Texas, for the Air Force. So had to call Red Cross, and then then I called you, and then I called a couple other people, and that was that night into the next morning. And then they put him in a medically induced coma for 12 days?
No, I think it was 10.
10 days?
Wow.
So he had more wires and things coming out of him than I ever remember.
And then the first thing I remember is waking up intubated, which was very stressful. And I think they left me intubated for a couple more hours, and then took that out. And I don't know, someone said I was sitting in bed just talking like nothing had ever happened. So, thank God that, as bad as it could have been, it turned out quite well.
So Beth, as you were sitting there and he was in this medically induced coma, there must have been a lot of thoughts going through your mind as far as not only his survival, but other things. So what were the fears that were going through, your mind and your heart?
Well, I kept thinking all the time, I'm not going to be a widow. And I told him that. I asked the nurse, the ICU nurse, if he could hear me. And she said, yes. So I kept telling him, you can't die on me. And I would gently squeeze his hand. I reminded him more than once an hour at least. But it was a lot of fear because I just knew that I had to make decisions for him. I mean, we talked a little bit like everybody does. So, what would you do if this happened? But I think you seriously need to have that talk because you just never know when something like that's going to happen. But then I had wonderful doctors, wonderful nurses who sat down and explained everything to me. And I mean, we just sat there, took turns reading to him, watching TV, like the TV shows that he liked. Um, and just, it was 10 days I didn't really sleep. I came home. Well, actually, I did. I came home to shower during shift changes. And then I ate something and I went back. So he was sleeping. I wasn't. But
So Beth, what was it, and Rich, what was it like for the two of you when Rich came home? What was that recovery time like? How long was it? And what was that like for both of you?
The recovery was actually a couple of months of physical therapy and cardiac therapy, cardiac rehab. And for my part, it was doing the work. As a teenager, I'd had an ankle injury, and I learned that therapy works, rehabilitation and physical therapy works. So I did take it seriously. It was very difficult. It was scary at sometimes.
And you were tired.
Yeah, you're weaker than you think you are. And Beth was with me every step of the way. I'd never felt like I had to do this alone. I mean, I had to do the actual therapy alone, but I never felt like, my life partner my wife Beth, wasn't with me, taking me there, encouraging me, letting me know that, hey, you're not as strong as you think you are. Let me help you.
And that it was okay to take naps after therapy. He was like a baby. I'm not taking a nap, but it's just, I think for him the biggest thing was that he thought he was going to wake up and go back to work, and it was like, no, honey, you've got to. I mean, it was what, 3 months until you half part time.
Fully, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, because thankfully I was lucid. My mom had come and we would talk about our family history, and I remembered all that, and I was ready to go back to work. Mentally, I was like, I'm okay. I'm ready to go back to work, but physically, it does take you some time to recover from,
of course,
an experience like that. I mean, I can imagine a major surgery or
of
a heart attack. You have to take the time to come back.
No, clearly. And Rich, as you were saying, thank God you had, some of the family memories and all that. Going through something like this is typically the type of scenario that, Beth, you would have, in a sense, some PTSD, some post-trauma stress disorder. And Rich, you went through something completely different. So you had two very different memories, one of which is sort of blank, and you needed to have people fill in some of that. So, when we were talking, we were discussing the fact that you remember a little bit more each year, and that's sort of normal as the onion is peeled back in post-traumatic stress. What have you done, and how have you dealt with some of those memories as they continue to come back, as you look back at this time, even 5 years later?
For me, it was remembering the events up until the time that I, had the heart attack. After that, when I woke up, I could only remember that I had gone sailing, and that, maybe we had kind of a bad day, and that's kind of all I can remember. But as time goes on, I remember more things about that day. It's funny. I remember my son came, and I remember him shaking my hand before he left. That somehow sticks in it's a memory I have. But for me, it's just remembering more things, which aren't very consequential. The facts of the case, which I already knew from reports. I think, it's more finding out from Beth and my son and my family who were there, finding out during different conversations, them revealing things, something will happen and they'll remind them of that and they'll mention it. And to me, I did not have a concept of how really scary it was for them, and how I think you're right. It is a traumatic experience that there's still, we still don't like to really talk about.
Yeah, you would think that we would want to celebrate that, which I am happy he's here. I just would like to not talk about it, and I think that's why he and I didn't talk about it. Now my sons and I do because we were all there. Um, I don't know why I never shared it with you. Maybe because if I was stressed, then I thought he would be stressed, and I didn't want him to be stressed again, But I mean, it was every year I realized how scared to death I was, and I still am. But now, we have to learn to celebrate the fact that I was not a widow,
Yes.
because that heart attack's like a widow maker. No. So you beat that one.
Well, absolutely, and we're thrilled that you are here, Rich. And Mark has told me a ton about you over the last couple of years, and I know that he's a good friend of yours, and we're so happy that you are here. But for the viewers, Beth, is there anything celebrating life is obviously huge. Is there anything that you want to share that you said you talk about it with your sons, but you don't talk about certain things with Rich because you're worried about stressing him out, which is understandable. But how are you personally managing what happened that day? How do you handle those emotions, in particular on the anniversary of the heart attack?
Well, I tried to suppress it until one of my boys calls. It's just one of those things I just don't like to talk about because it just was I don't know how I got through it, and I'm just glad I made the right decisions and I kept the family together. But I mean, I was on pure adrenaline. And even now, thinking back about it, I'm just so, just, no, I don't know, distraught not the right word, but I mean, I'm just glad that he's here. And I guess if I don't talk about it, then,
Yeah, and I think, it's typical of families maybe not to like to relive, a bad experience, even though I did survive. It wasn't a planned surgery and where, went in and had a surgery and recovered. It was this traumatic event that lasted, a 10 days where you weren't sure what the outcome would be. And, so we do celebrate the day that I returned from, serving in Afghanistan because that's a happy time. And, but, we kind of don't like to talk about it. And for me, actually, it was also the day that I quit smoking. So whenever I would go to the cardiologist office and you see the chart on the wall that says, the benefits of smoking or it's our heart healthy lifestyle, you're checking off those years, a year this happens, a year this happens. So to me, that was kind of that was my kind of how I counted the time. But I'm kind of a creature of habit. I'm remembering my wedding anniversary and my wife's birthday, but maybe not so much that traumatic event. And even leading up to this today, I could see the stress that Beth had,
Sure.
has. And but I think coming out of this conversation though is the idea that we need to be a little more open and vulnerable about it, and then learn to celebrate it.
Yeah, that's what my new goal is next year we are going to celebrate the fact that you survived, and we survived together. And because a lot of people don't, they.
And we're gonna actually come back, and we're going to speak a little bit more about the surviving and probably some things that people can take forward in their life who have been through similar situations. So we're going to take a break now and go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we'll continue to talk with Rich and Beth.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed within their lifetime. RVN-TV is asking for your support for breast cancer survivors and those currently battling the disease. You can do this by wearing pink ribbons or clothing throughout the month of October. Early detection and treatment is crucial, and we at RVN-TV encourage all women to consider undergoing breast clinical exams and mammograms. The fight against breast cancer needs your support.
Hi, and welcome back to Marriage Matters. Today, Dr. Mark and I are here with Rich and Beth Lahue, and they have an incredible story to share with you about a traumatic event that they have survived as a couple. They've been married for 30 years, and we are so grateful to have the two of you here to be as vulnerable as you've been. As Mark brought up, I mean, there's a lot of PTSD around an experience that the two of you had coming from completely different sides of it. And so we want to first thank you so much for being so vulnerable. What lessons have you two learned from this experience and how you've survived it together?
Well, I think we knew from the very beginning when we got married, we weren't around family. We were together, and we knew that we were just going to have each other, and obviously we were blessed with children and friends, but we always knew we just had each other, and we were going to be there for each other. So we talked a lot, and we kind of knew what each other wanted. You think that, and then I'm glad that I really did.
Yeah, well, we have a great commitment to each other, which we always have had throughout the years of marriage. That's never waned. And Beth is right. We didn't have that close family support network because of just moving around for career reasons and such. So we did relied on each other. We have a very close family. We tried to our sons and us try to be together on holidays, and when major events happen, be together. So I think that commitment that has been throughout was one lesson that will help you get through this.
Commitment and trust. I mean, I trust Rich that he's gonna make the right decision when it comes to something like if the roles were reversed,
right?
He would have done.
Yeah, and we had talked, because I had to go away for a military service and come back. We had talked about these, life and death issues before. Not a lot, but enough that we know where each other stand. And that was an important, thing for Beth. I'm finding out as when these critical decisions had to be made, that she had something to fall back on. In our relationship, she knew what my wishes would be, and she knew that whatever this decision she made, that I would support that, no matter what it was.
And Rich and Beth, that initial discussion in all of our lives, life is always a gift to us, and every day is what we have. Tomorrow is never promised, no matter how young or how old we are. So having those discussions, that's a really important point. Now that you've been through this experience, and it's 5 years, you're married for 30. Again, what the audience doesn't know is that you have this great relationship. And after this, how have you continued to nurture? There's so many people who, when they have one experience and a second experience, and it's hard to juxtapose or bring those together, it's hard to see the 6 and the 9. And we talk about all the time in our coaching, it's hard to see what the other person experienced. How are you continuing over these past 5 years to nurture and strengthen the amazing relationship, the marriage that you have?
Well, I think the first thing that came out of the rehab time is we are spending much more time together. And something as simple as grocery shopping. I would just let Beth buy the groceries, but when I was in rehab, I had all this time. I wasn't at work, so
I couldn't leave you alone.
Right. But that's been kind of a springboard to making sure that we do these things together instead of apart. So that's brought us closer together because the more time you're spending together, the more conversations you're having, and the more deeply connected you get.
Well, I think it's trust too. I mean, I think that, our togetherness and knowing each other, I know like deep down inside that I made the right decision. And even if the outcome wasn't the way I wanted it, I would still have been okay with all the decisions I made because we trusted each other enough to know that we tried our best. So now it's just like every day is, I know it sounds corny, but I'm happier every day that we're together instead of apart. Like the first time he went away on a business trip, I couldn't sleep. I still don't sleep when he goes away, which is like really weird. But
I think another key thing is that we don't shy away from discussing things that are bothering us. Before then, when we were going to be, living this dream life together, and something that wasn't uncomfortable would come up, we might avoid talking about it just because, it's, we're going to get through it by not talking about it. But now, when things aren't going right, we're much more, one of us is apt to say, okay, I can see there's something wrong right now. We need to start talking about this. And that's been great. There's been a couple of conversations we've had, especially in the last 1 or 2 years, that we wouldn't probably not have had before the heart attack because we didn't realize that we can't let these things fester or pretend that they're going to go away. Even if there's something that will go away, we still need to talk about it.
You've hit so clearly on what, our passion is and what we found in bringing couples together is just communication deepens connection, deepens love.
Yeah, and I wanted to actually ask you, one of the things that you guys said when we were on the phone with you a couple weeks ago, I think it was you, Beth, who said you actually welcome arguing now. Arguing it makes you feel good because, again, he's still here with you. So can you tell our viewers a little bit about that? Because I think most people look at arguing as a negative thing, and now here it is after what you experienced 5 years ago, you look at that very differently.
Well, we have ground rules. Like, we never say anything that you can't take back. We never really yell. We never were yellers. No. So there's like parameters. So it's like safe arguing, because I know that he's not going to say anything that's going to hurt me, mentally hurt me, his words. We should have probably been liars. We're pretty good at talking and negotiating and.
Well, we respect each other deeply. So when there's a disagreement, we understand that we need to we already respect the other person's opinion, and so it does make you more honest in your argument, and it makes you much more vulnerable because then you know that you're not trying to convince someone of something. You're trying to understand what your partner's opinion is. I respect you. I love you. I've known you for 30 years. If we're having a difference, then we need to respect that difference and find out, what it is and how we can come together.
That is so important.
Respecting each other when you disagree.
Yes,
yes.
With that message, particularly in this time in our country, that message should be just universal. Just Tell you what, we can respect each other and care for each other even if we disagree. You've hit on so many important points in lessons that people can take, and I want to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding, but being vulnerable with each other, listening to understand and not just to hear, respect, trust, and those are the, in a sense, pillars or foundation, maybe among others, that allow you to really have survived and in fact grown and strengthened your relationship after such a traumatic and scary event. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, I think those talking points became real to us after the heart attack and these years afterwards, where we've grown closer together. They're not talking points anymore. They're not. They are real.
Yeah, it's
if I could communicate
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And also, I think it's good to know when to ask for help. Like, we're not experts. So, it's okay. And what the wonderful thing that came out of having the heart attack is they do want you to go and have some, counseling, which is wonderful, because that's like the springboard to.
It opens a discussion.
Right.
It kind of forces its way to make you talk where you might have been reluctant otherwise.
Of course. So time always flies when you're having a great time, and having a chance to talk with you is fantastic. So as we come up into the last couple moments, briefly, do you have a message, a suggestion to those people who are potentially going through what you are, to look and see forward, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe a tip that they could have to help them get through this?
I think, for the one who suffered the heart attack, you're weaker than you think you are. You need to listen to what they're telling you for the rehab. And while you're going through the rehab, you're going to want to do probably a little bit more than you ought to. And just realize that you're weak. You're weaker than you think you are, and that you do need help, and that you need to ask for help. And I think by asking the one closest to you for help, that's going to strengthen that bond. And even now that I'm quote unquote healthy, I still rely on my wife for a lot of things. And they're going to see things about you. They're going to see that 9 that you think is a 6. And you need to ask them and listen to them.
Well, that's fantastic advice, and thank you both very much. Continued vibrant life and success.
And for the audience who's watching, we believe that you've added a lot of value, because there are people who are going through what you went through. Every day this happens. And if your story can add some value to our viewers, that's what we're here for. And we thank you so much for being with us on Marriage Matters.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.